In 1989, a retired school teacher in rural Kentucky told her daughter she had eaten toast for dinner 4 nights in a row. Not because she was broke, not because she could not cook, because standing at a stove for 45 minutes to make one plate of food felt like too much math for too little reward. That woman is the reason this list exists. Number 7 on this list costs less than $2 and takes 11 minutes. Number 3 was called the laziest meal in America by a food columnist in 1976, and he meant it as an insult. He was wrong. Hit that subscribe button and let us count down 25 cheap 15-minute suppers for seniors who are exhausted, underfunded, and done eating the same thing on rotation. Number 25, egg and toast soldiers. This one has been feeding people since before your parents were born, and somehow we forgot it existed. You fried 2 eggs in butter until the whites set and the edges went crispy and lacy. You toasted 2 slices of bread, cut them into strips, and you used those strips to break the yolk. That was supper. The whole thing took 8 minutes and cost roughly 60 cents. In England, they have been doing this for 100 years and calling it civilized. In America, we called it breakfast food and decided supper had to be more complicated than that. It does not. A senior eating alone does not need a 3-course meal. They need something hot, something real, and something that does not require reading a recipe with the font size of a parking ticket. Eggs are protein, butter is fat, bread is comfort. 8 minutes, done. Number 24. Canned tomato soup with a grilled cheese half. Not 2 halves, not a full sandwich with ambition. 1 half of a grilled cheese sandwich, golden and pressed, sitting beside a bowl of Campbell's tomato soup, thinned with a little milk instead of water, which made it creamy and changed the whole character of the thing. A can of soup cost 69 cents. A half sandwich used 1 slice of cheese and 1 slice of bread per side. Total cost under $1.50. Total time 12 minutes if you did not rush the sandwich, and you should not rush the sandwich. The cheese has to melt all the way to the edges. That part is not negotiable. This was the meal that appeared on sick days and snow days and days when the world felt heavier than usual. It did not fix anything. It just made things feel slightly more manageable, which is honestly all supper is supposed to do. Number 23. Rice with a fried egg on top. Do not laugh. Half the world eats this every single day and considers it a perfectly complete meal, because it is. You cooked a cup of rice, which took 10 minutes in a pot with a lid on. While the rice finished, you fried 1 egg in a little oil or butter until the yolk was still soft and the white was set. You slid the egg on top of the rice, added soy sauce or hot sauce or just salt and pepper, and you ate it while it was still warm enough to matter. This meal exists in Japan, in Korea, in the Philippines, in Mexico, and in approximately every country on Earth, except the ones that decided supper required a minimum of 4 components. A cup of dry rice cost about 15 cents. 1 egg cost about 20 cents. That is a 35-cent supper with more nutritional sense than half the frozen dinners taking up space in the grocery store freezer aisle. Number 22. Buttered noodles with Parmesan. There is a very fancy Italian dish called cacio e pepe that costs $30 in a restaurant and requires technique and confidence, a specific kind of pasta, and the right ratio of starch to water. And honestly, the whole thing is a lot. Buttered noodles with Parmesan is cacio e pepe for people who have better things to do. You boiled egg noodles for 8 minutes, drained them, tossed them with a generous pat of butter, and shook Parmesan over the top from whatever container you had in the refrigerator door. Salt, pepper, done. A bag of egg noodles cost under $1. A container of store-brand Parmesan cost $1.89 and lasted 2 months. This meal asked nothing of you and gave you something warm and filling and genuinely satisfying in return. Children love it. Adults who are tired love it. It is impossible to eat a bowl of buttered noodles and feel worse than you did before you started. Number 21, tuna on crackers with hot sauce, not a tuna sandwich, not tuna salad with celery and onion and a full production. A can of tuna, drained, mixed with a spoonful of mayonnaise and a few shakes of hot sauce, eaten directly on top of crackers, spread out across a plate. This was the meal that seniors made standing at the kitchen counter without bothering to sit down, which is a problem we will address shortly. But first, let us acknowledge that the meal itself was perfect. A can of tuna cost 89 cents. A sleeve of crackers was already in the pantry. Total time from opening the cabinet to sitting down with a plate, 6 minutes. 6 minutes. There is not a drive-through in America that can beat that. The hot sauce is not optional, by the way. The hot sauce is what separates a meal from a snack. Number 20, white bean and garlic toast. You took a can of white beans, drained them, and warmed them in a small pan with a drizzle of olive oil, a clove of garlic pressed or minced or just smashed with the side of a spoon, if your hands were not cooperating that evening, and a pinch of salt. You toasted a thick slice of bread, spooned the beans on top, and finished it with a little black pepper and whatever fresh or dried herb you had within reach. Rosemary, if you had it. Parsley, if you did not. Nothing if neither was available. The beans were creamy. The toast was sturdy enough to hold them. The garlic did what garlic always does, which is make everything smell like you actually cooked something. A can of white beans cost 69 cents, one slice of bread from whatever loaf was already open. This meal felt like something a small Italian grandmother would approve of, and that is the highest possible endorsement. Number 19, scrambled eggs with whatever is in the refrigerator. The refrigerator audit meal. You opened the refrigerator, you looked at what was actually in there, and you added it to eggs. Leftover roasted vegetables from 2 nights ago, a slice of deli ham torn into pieces, half an onion that had been sitting on the second shelf since Tuesday, a spoonful of salsa from a jar that was 3/4 gone, a handful of shredded cheese from a bag that was almost empty. Everything went into 2 beaten eggs in a buttered pan over medium heat. You stirred slowly and pulled the pan off the heat while the eggs were still slightly soft. They finished cooking from the residual heat, which is the trick that separates decent scrambled eggs from the rubbery kind, and the whole pan came together in 9 minutes. This is not a recipe. This is a philosophy. The philosophy is that eggs are the most forgiving ingredient in any kitchen, and a senior who keeps a dozen eggs in the refrigerator is never more than 10 minutes away from a real supper. Number 18, quesadilla with black beans and cheese. 1 flour tortilla, a spoonful of canned black beans spread across 1/2, a handful of shredded cheese over the beans, fold it in half, press it flat in a dry skillet over medium heat. 2 minutes per side until the tortilla was golden and the cheese was fully melted, and you could hear it sizzling slightly when you pressed down with a spatula. That sound, by the way, is the sound of things going right. Cut it into wedges, add salsa or sour cream if you had it. A single flour tortilla cost about 15 cents from a pack. Black beans cost 69 cents a can and made enough filling for 4 quesadillas across the week. Cheese was already in the refrigerator because cheese is always in the refrigerator. This is not a rule I made up. This is just how kitchens work. Number 17, chicken broth with egg noodles and a soft boiled egg. Not chicken noodle soup from a can, though there is nothing wrong with chicken noodle soup from a can. This was a homemade version that took 12 minutes and tasted 4 times better. You brought 2 cups of chicken broth to a simmer, added a handful of egg noodles, and cooked them right in the broth until tender. While the noodles cooked, you lowered a single egg into a small pot of boiling water and cooked it for exactly 7 minutes. 7 minutes gives you a white that is fully set and a yolk that is still soft and slightly jammy in the center. You peeled the egg, halved it, laid both halves in the bowl of noodle soup, and ate it while the yolk bled gold into the broth. A carton of broth cost under $1.50. An egg cost under 20 cents. This was the meal that tasted like someone cared enough to make you something, even when that someone had to be you. Number 16. Pasta with olive oil, garlic, and canned sardines. Before you make a face, hear the case out. Canned sardines packed in olive oil are one of the most nutritious foods available in any grocery store on earth. They are loaded with omega-3 fatty acids, calcium from the soft bones, vitamin D, and protein. They cost about $1.25 a tin. And when you drained a tin of sardines, broke the fish apart into rough pieces, and tossed them with pasta, cooked in salted water and a clove of garlic sautéed in olive oil, what you got was something that tasted deeply savory and satisfying and genuinely complete. A squeeze of lemon if you had one, a pinch of red pepper flakes if you liked heat. A food journalist in 1973 called sardine pasta the thinking person's fast food, and nobody listened. And that is one of the small tragedies of American food history. Total cost, under $2. Total time, 14 minutes. Number 15, pinto beans warmed with butter and cornbread from a box. A half can of pinto beans warmed slowly in a small saucepan with a generous pat of butter, salt, and a splash of the liquid from the can to keep them loose. Meanwhile, a single serving portion of cornbread mixed from a small box or made from a simple recipe of cornmeal, egg, milk, salt, and baking powder poured into a muffin tin and baked at 400 degrees for 12 minutes. You ate the beans from the pan with a spoon and tore the cornbread into pieces to soak up the liquid. A can of pinto beans cost 69 cents. A box of cornbread mix cost 89 cents. This was the meal that fed the rural South through every hard decade of the 20th century. It does not require an apology or a fancier name. It just requires a saucepan and a muffin tin and the understanding that simple food made with care is not lesser food. Number 14, tomato soup made from scratch in 12 minutes. Not from a can, from scratch. Because the difference in flavor is significant enough to matter, and the difference in effort is smaller than you think. You warmed a drizzle of olive oil in a small pot, added half an onion, chopped roughly, and cooked it for 3 minutes until soft. You added a can of crushed tomatoes, half a cup of water, a pinch of sugar to cut the acidity, salt, and pepper. You simmered it for 8 minutes. You used an immersion blender right in the pot, or a regular blender if that was what you had, until smooth. That was it. 12 minutes. The result tasted nothing like the can. It tasted like something you made, which is categorically different. A can of crushed tomatoes cost under $1. Half an onion cost almost nothing. This soup, eaten with a piece of buttered toast on the side, was a complete supper that cost under $2 and tasted like you had been standing at the stove for an hour. Number 13, fried rice with whatever vegetables and 1 egg. Day-old rice was the essential ingredient, and the reason was simple. Freshly cooked rice was too wet and clumped in the pan. Rice that had sat in the refrigerator overnight was dry enough to fry properly, each grain separate and slightly chewy in the way that made fried rice satisfying rather than just starchy. You heated a little oil in a skillet, added the cold rice, pressed it flat, and let it sit without stirring for 2 minutes so the bottom crisped. Then you pushed it to the side, cracked an egg into the empty space, scrambled it quickly, and folded everything together with a splash of soy sauce and whatever vegetables were in the refrigerator. Frozen peas went in, still frozen and thawed in 60 seconds from the heat of the pan. Leftover cooked broccoli, corn from a can, a handful of spinach that wilted immediately. All of it worked. This meal was the reason smart cooks always made more rice than they needed the night before. Number 12, lentil soup in 15 minutes. Red lentils were the secret weapon because, unlike green or brown lentils, red lentils did not need soaking. They dissolved into a thick, creamy soup in 12 to 15 minutes of simmering. You softened half an onion in a little oil, added a cup of red lentils, 2 cups of water or broth, a pinch of cumin, salt, and pepper, and let it go. By the time you had washed the knife and the cutting board and refilled your glass of water, the soup was done. A cup of dried red lentils cost about 40 cents and made enough soup for a full bowl with some left for tomorrow. The texture was thick enough to be filling, and the cumin gave it a warmth that made it feel like something rather than nothing. Nutritionists call red lentils a complete food. Your grandmother called them cheap. Both descriptions are accurate. Number 11, cheese and potato microwave soup. This one started in the microwave and stayed there, which was either a compromise or a revelation depending on your opinion of microwave cooking. One medium potato diced small, covered with water in a microwave-safe bowl, cooked on high for 5 minutes until tender, drained. Then returned to the bowl with a splash of milk, a handful of shredded cheddar, salt, and pepper, microwaved for another 2 minutes until the cheese melted and everything blended into a rough, chunky soup. Mashed slightly with a fork if you wanted it thicker, left alone if you wanted the chunks. A potato cost about 20 cents. Shredded cheese was already in the refrigerator, or it should have been. We already established this. Total time, 8 minutes. Total dishes, 1 bowl and a fork. For a senior whose knees were not cooperating that evening, that 1 bowl was the difference between supper and crackers eaten standing over the sink. Number 10, egg drop soup. 2 cups of chicken broth are brought to a rolling boil in a small pot. 2 eggs are cracked into a cup and beaten briefly with a fork. The eggs are poured in a slow, thin stream while you stir the broth in a slow circle with the other hand. The eggs set instantly, forming soft golden ribbons that float through the broth. Add salt and a pinch of white pepper. Done. 5 minutes from turning on the burner to sitting down with the bowl. This was the meal that asked the least of you and somehow delivered the most. When you were sick, it healed you. When you were exhausted, it sustained you. When you had no appetite at all but your body needed something warm and real, this was the answer. A carton of broth cost under $1.50. 2 eggs cost under 50 cents. For under $2 and 5 minutes of effort, you had something that tasted like genuine care. Number 9, pan-fried kielbasa with mustard and bread. A few thick coins of kielbasa or smoked sausage were dropped into a dry skillet over medium-high heat and left alone for 2 minutes per side until deeply browned and slightly crispy at the cut edges. That browning was everything. The exterior caramelized into something smoky and slightly sweet. The inside stayed juicy and hot. You ate it with a piece of bread and yellow mustard for dipping, and possibly a spoonful of sauerkraut from a jar in the refrigerator if you were the kind of person who kept sauerkraut, and more people should be that kind of person. A link of kielbasa cost about $1.50 and provided enough coins for a full plate. Total time, 7 minutes. This was the honest working supper. No pretension, no garnish, just browned meat and bread and mustard, and the deeply satisfying knowledge that you fed yourself well without once consulting a recipe. Number 8, black-eyed peas with hot sauce and cornbread. A half can of black-eyed peas warmed in a small saucepan with a little butter, salt, and a generous amount of hot sauce stirred in at the end, not a polite amount of hot sauce. The kind that made the broth go from beige to something more interesting. Served with a single square of cornbread, either from a box or from the same quick recipe mentioned earlier. This was the meal that Southern grandmothers made without thinking. The autopilot supper of the rural South for well over 100 years. In New Orleans, they say black-eyed peas bring luck. In Mississippi, they say black-eyed peas bring supper, which is more immediately useful. A can cost 69 cents. The cornbread cost under $1. The hot sauce already lived in the refrigerator door where it had probably been sitting since sometime last year. Number 7, avocado toast with a poached egg. Before avocado toast became the symbol of everything a certain type of newspaper columnist thought was wrong with young people, it was just a piece of toast with avocado on it. which is a simple and genuinely good thing to eat at any age and at any meal, including supper. You toasted a thick slice of bread, mashed half a ripe avocado on top with a fork, seasoned it with salt and a squeeze of lemon or lime, and laid a poached egg on top. The poached egg sounds intimidating, and it should not. You brought a small pot of water to a gentle simmer, cracked the egg into a cup, slid it in, and ignored it for 3 minutes. That was the whole technique. The yolk ran when you broke it and soaked into the avocado and the bread, and the whole thing became something far greater than the sum of its parts. Total cost under $2, total time 10 minutes, total dishes judged by newspaper columnists 0. We are not doing that here. Number 6, canned salmon with crackers and sliced cucumber. A can of salmon, drained and flaked into a bowl, was mixed with a spoonful of mayonnaise, a squeeze of lemon, salt, and pepper. It was served alongside a sleeve of crackers and half a cucumber sliced into rounds. You alternated between spreading the salmon on crackers and eating the cucumber slices plain as a palate break between bites. The calcium in the soft bones of canned salmon, which you either ate without thinking about or carefully picked around depending on your disposition, was genuinely significant for seniors concerned about bone density. Doctors recommend it specifically. Your grandmother did not know the science. She just knew that a can of salmon was always in the pantry and crackers were always on the counter. And between those two things, supper was always findable. A can of salmon cost under $2. The crackers and cucumber added maybe another $1. Under $3 total, no cooking required, and no dishes beyond the bowl and a plate. Number 5, pasta e fagioli, the fast version. The traditional version of this Italian pasta and bean soup simmered for hours with pork rinds and aromatics and homemade broth and was genuinely extraordinary. The 15-minute version was also genuinely extraordinary, just quieter about it. You softened half an onion in olive oil for 3 minutes. Then you added a can of white beans with their liquid, a cup of broth, a handful of small pasta like ditalini or broken spaghetti, salt, pepper, and a pinch of dried rosemary. Everything simmered together for 8 minutes until the pasta was cooked and the beans had partially broken down and thickened the broth into something almost creamy. A drizzle of olive oil on top to finish. A can of white beans cost 69 cents. A handful of pasta was essentially free from whatever box was already open. A carton of broth cost under $1.50. The whole pot cost under $3 and tasted like something a grandmother in Naples would not be embarrassed by. Number 4, sweet potato with butter and cinnamon. 1 medium sweet potato, microwaved for 6 minutes, flipped, microwaved for 4 more, split open, pressed at the ends to open it wide, filled with a generous pat of butter, a sprinkle of cinnamon, a pinch of salt, and a drizzle of honey if you had it. That was supper. The flesh of a well-cooked sweet potato was sweet and dense and soft enough to eat without any chewing effort at all. It was filling in a way that surprised people who had only ever thought of sweet potatoes as a side dish. The butter melted into every crevice. The cinnamon made the whole thing smell like a kitchen that knew what it was doing. A single sweet potato cost about 60 cents. 10 minutes of effort, including the time it took to find the honey in the back of the cabinet. For a senior with dental concerns, or a tired evening, or simply no interest in cooking anything more complicated, a buttered sweet potato with cinnamon was not a lesser supper. It was a perfect one. Number 3, skillet shakshuka for 1. In the Middle East and across North Africa, shakshuka has been feeding people cheaply and well for centuries. In America, we discovered it about 15 years ago and immediately started putting it on brunch menus for $16 with artisan bread on the side. Ignore that. Make it yourself in 12 minutes and eat it for supper, which is what it was designed for in the first place. You warmed a small skillet with a drizzle of oil, added half a can of crushed tomatoes with a pinch of cumin, paprika, salt, and pepper, and let it simmer for 5 minutes until it thickened slightly. Then you made 2 small wells in the sauce with a spoon and cracked 1 egg into each well. Then you covered the skillet with a lid or a piece of foil and let the eggs cook in the steam for 4 to 5 minutes until the whites were set and the yolks were still soft. Eaten directly from the skillet with a piece of bread for scooping. 1 pan, 1 serving, under $1.50. A food columnist called this the laziest meal in America in 1976 and meant it as an insult. He had clearly never eaten it. Number 2, white rice with butter and soft-boiled egg and soy sauce. This is the meal that the world eats when it is tired, not a specific person, not a specific culture. The entire world across every continent that grows rice, which is most of them. You cooked a cup of white rice in a pot with a lid for 10 minutes. You soft-boiled 1 egg in a separate small pot for 7 minutes. You combined them in a bowl with a generous pat of butter that melted into the hot rice immediately, a drizzle of soy sauce, salt, pepper, and if you were feeling ambitious, a shake of sesame oil, or a pinch of dried flakes of nori from a packet. The egg went on top, halved, yolk still soft, bleeding gold into the butter and soy. This meal has no nationality and every nationality at once. It is what you make when you are 50 years old or 80 years old or any age in between, and the day has asked more of you than you had to give. It costs under $1. It takes 12 minutes. It is warm and soft and salted correctly, and it asks nothing of you except that you sit down and eat it slowly. Number 1, chicken thigh and rice, 1 pan, 15 minutes. 1 boneless chicken thigh, salt, pepper, garlic powder. Into a small skillet with a drizzle of oil, skin side down, 5 minutes without touching it. Let the skin go golden. Let the fat render. Flip it for 2 minutes. Then add half a cup of rice directly to that same pan. Pour in 3/4 of a cup of chicken broth. Cover it, drop the heat to low, and walk away for 8 minutes. When you lift that lid, the rice has absorbed every drop of savory liquid and the chicken is sitting on top looking like you planned the whole thing. 1 pan, 15 minutes. Under $3. This is the meal that proves feeding yourself well has nothing to do with money or skill or having someone across the table to cook for. It has to do with deciding you are worth the trouble. And you are. Here is your challenge. Make 1 meal from this list tonight. Not this weekend. Tonight, sit down at the table, use a real plate, eat it slowly, then tell me in the comments which one you made, because these are not just recipes. They are evidence that 15 minutes in 1 pan are enough.